A winter fog curled around the lampposts of Mayfair, muffling the world in a ghostly hush. The hour was late, too late for polite society, yet a frantic rap echoed through Hercule Poirot's door. Before the great detective could adjust his dressing gown, Lady Rosalind Harbury stumbled inside, her gloved hands trembling. "They have taken it! My husband is dead, and the sapphire gone!" Chapter 1. The Shattered Sapphire. The fog had not lifted by the time Poirot and Lady Rosalind Harbury stepped out into the waiting motor car. It clung to the windows like damp muslin, blurring street lamps into pale golden smudges. Poirot, settling himself primly on the leather seat, adjusted his moustache with a gloved hand, an instinctive gesture, a small reassurance before stepping into the unknown. Lady Rosalind sat rigidly beside him, her hands clasped so tightly in her lap that the knuckles shone bone-white beneath her gloves. She was a tall woman, elegant even in distress, her dark hair pinned in a fashion that suggested old aristocratic restraint rather than modern frivolity. But now her composure had fissured. The tremor in her voice had revealed it. And as the silent motor slid through the fog, Poirot observed the way her eyes darted nervously, like a deer expecting the snap of a hunter's twig. "My lady," he began softly, "you must endeavor to breathe. You see, when one does not breathe, one faints, and when one faints, then one is of no use to the police or to me." She exhaled shakily. "Monsieur Poirot, I did not know what else to do. The maid, Clara, found Henry slumped in his study, and the sapphire, my family's sapphire, it was in the safe mere hours ago." "Your husband kept it in his study?" Poirot asked with a slight frown. "A place accessible to all within the household?" "Not accessible," she said bitterly. "Henry was territorial about his valuables." Poirot made a thoughtful sound in his throat. The motor drew up before Harbury House, a stately mansion crouched in the fog like a brooding giant. Police lanterns flickered at the entrance. Shadows moved briskly about. Poirot stepped out with fastidious care, tapping a bit of moisture from his sleeve. "Madame, allow me to look," he said softly. Inside, the house smelled faintly of polish and cigar smoke. Poirot instantly sensed the atmosphere of disruption. Servants huddled near the main staircase, whispering among themselves with pale faces. A uniformed constable stood stiffly by the study door, his eyes widening with recognition when he saw Poirot approaching. "Monsieur Poirot, Scotland Yard will be pleased you're assisting." Poirot inclined his head modestly and entered the study. The room was one of power, a mahogany desk, shelves lined with dusty volumes, a heavy sapphire blue rug that swallowed one's footsteps. But the centerpiece of attention lay, half-slumped beside the desk, the late Henry Harbury, financier, collector, and, judging by his tight features, even in death, a man accustomed to getting his way. Poirot moved closer. There was a wound at the back of the man's skull, blunt but precise. A blow, not an accidental fall. His hand still clutched a torn scrap of paper. Inspector Gale, thin, sharp-eyed, stood near the body. "Evening, Poirot," he said, "or morning, depending how you look at it." "My apologies for my tardiness," Poirot replied with a small smile. "I was engaged in some very important rest when tragedy came knocking." Gale snorted lightly. Poirot noticed, with some amusement, that the inspector attempted to imitate the detective's methodical scanning of the environment. "Everything suggests a robbery gone wrong," Gale said. "Safe over there was forced, jewel missing, husband dead, straightforward." But murder rarely is, mon ami," Poirot murmured. "The simplest explanation is often like the cheap suit. It fits at first glance, but wrinkles upon closer inspection. He approached the safe. Its door hung crookedly, the metal bent, a crude attempt, too crude. Poirot crouched. His fingers traced the marks. "No," he said quietly, "this was staged. Look, the damage lacks depth. Superficial, a performance." Gale sighed. "You're going to tell me this was an inside job?" Poirot raised a brow. "You object?" "I object," Gale said, "only because it means paperwork." Poirot did not smile. His eyes narrowed on the scrap in the dead man's hand. "Permit me," he murmured. Gale nodded. Poirot carefully unfolded the torn paper. It revealed only the bottom half of a word. Ice. No additional letters. Lady Rosalind, who had been lingering by the doorway, took a shaky breath. "What does it mean?" "It means," Poirot said, "that your husband attempted to write something before he died. A message, a clue." "Alice?" Gale suggested. "Bernice? Office? Or just ice, referring to the sapphire?" Poirot nodded thoughtfully. "Perhaps, but we must not rush. The dying words, they are the most delicate of clues. Like butterflies, they must be handled gently." His eyes drifted to the rug. He noticed something, a faint impression, hardly visible. "Kneel beside me, if you please, Inspector." Gale groaned, but obeyed. "Look here, a footprint, very faint. The rug is thick, yes, but still. Someone stepped on something before entering. Mud? No, dust. Fine, grey dust." Gale squinted. "And?" Poirot pointed to the fireplace, the hearth. "Henry Harbury burned something tonight." He rose, inspecting the ashes. With a delicate motion, he used the tip of his fountain pen to lift fragments, darkened but not destroyed. A corner of a document, a signature line, the faint imprint of wax. Poirot murmured, "A contract of some sort." As he lifted the fragment, Lady Rosalind gasped that Henry mentioned receiving something earlier today, a document from his business partner. He was angry about it. "Angry?" Poirot repeated. "He refused to explain." Poirot stored that away. He stood surveying the room again. "Lady Harbury, may I trouble you to assemble all those present in the household tonight? I will ask questions. The answers, they will arrange themselves into patterns." She nodded shakily and withdrew. Gale looked at Poirot. "You really think someone in the house did it?" Poirot considered. "Mon ami, consider the facts. A forced safe that was not truly forced. A dying message, a document burned, and the sapphire, a most valuable stone, gone. Yet no windows broken, no doors forced. A professional thief? None. A thief would not murder. Murder invites attention." He tapped his temple. "No, Inspector, this crime was personal." The suspects were gathered in the drawing room, upper-class elegance marred by the tension crackling silently among them. Poirot entered with hands clasped neatly behind his back. He paused, observing each face. Suspect 1, Lady Rosalind Harbury, poised but shaken. Her marriage, Poirot sensed, held more secrets than she revealed. Suspect 2, Charles Denholm, Henry's business partner. A tall man with hawkish features and a habit of smoothing his hair when nervous. His eyes shifted quickly, too quickly. Suspect 3, Clara Foxwell, the maid who discovered the body. Pale as parchment, eyes reddened from crying, hands twisting a handkerchief compulsively. Suspect 4, Oliver Harbury, Henry's nephew. A young man with a charming smile that didn't reach his eyes. A gambler, according to whispers Poirot had overheard. Suspect 5, Miss Edwina March, Lady Rosalind's companion. Quiet, almost mouse-like, with a gaze that lingered longer than necessary on others' faces. Observant, perhaps dangerously so. Poirot cleared his throat politely. "Thank you all. I, Hercule Poirot, will ask questions. You will answer with honesty, if you please. Lies, they confuse my little grey cells, and when they are confused, I am most disagreeable. Oliver smirked faintly, but a look from Lady Rosalind silenced him. Poirot began with Charles Denholm. "Monsieur, you are the last to see Henry Harbury alive, I understand." Denholm stiffened. "Earlier this evening, yes. We discussed business." Would this business involve a document? Perhaps one that Mr. Harbury wished not to sign? Denholm swallowed. He refused the merger I proposed, quite stubborn about it." Poirot nodded. "And you were upset. Anyone would be," Denholm said sharply, then softened his tone. "Forgive me. Henry was difficult, but he didn't deserve this." Poirot noted the outburst carefully. He moved to Clara. "Mademoiselle, you found the body?" "Yes, sir," she whispered. "I brought his tea, as always, at 10. He did not respond. I thought he was sleeping. Then I saw the blood." She trembled violently. Poirot offered a reassuring nod. "You heard nothing unusual tonight?" She hesitated. I did hear voices earlier, raised voices, but I do not know who." Poirot turned slightly toward Lady Rosalind, but she avoided his gaze. Interesting. Next, Oliver Harbury lounged in the chair like a cat in the sun. "Oliver," Poirot said pleasantly. "You were out this evening?" "Yes, at the club. Ask anyone." "And you returned when?" 10:30. "The time of the murder is estimated between 9 and 11. Gale interjected. Oliver widened his eyes dramatically. "Am I a suspect?" Poirot's voice was mild. "Everyone is a suspect, monsieur." Oliver's grin flickered. "And now, Miss March," Poirot said, turning to Rosalind's companion. "You were with Lady Harbury all evening?" "Yes," Edwina said quietly. "We played cards until 11. Poirot nodded slowly. "And you saw nothing? Heard nothing?" Her lashes fluttered. "Only Lady Rosalind leaving briefly to speak with her husband. They quarrelled." Poirot turned sharply to Rosalind. "You quarrelled with your husband tonight, madame?" She lifted her chin, eyes glistening. "Yes, Monsieur Poirot. Henry and I quarrelled often. He was harsh, but I did not kill him." Poirot bowed his head politely. "Merci. That will be all for now. Inspector Gale will ensure no one leaves the premises." Gale nodded, asserting his authority. Poirot stepped out into the silent hallway, breathing deeply. The house felt heavy with secrets, old, festering ones, the kind that grew in the shadows of marriages, partnerships, debts, and loyalties. He re-entered the study alone, closing the door softly behind him. His eyes travelled once more across the scene, the body now removed, the fireplace ashes cooling, the safe hanging ajar. He moved slowly, almost meditatively, examining every surface. Then something caught his eye. A glint, a faint sparkle beneath the desk. Poirot bent down. A small sliver of glass. No, crystal. He lifted it delicately. "Interesting," he murmured. "Not from the safe. Not from a broken object nearby. A cufflink, perhaps? A decorative ornament, or—" His eyes widened subtly. "A fragment from a jewel case." "Someone," he whispered, "removed the sapphire not from the safe, but from its box. And in their haste, they left this behind." He tucked the fragment neatly into his pocket. A pattern was emerging slowly, delicately, like frost forming on a window, but one final detail tugged at his attention, the scent. He moved toward the curtains, leaned in, perfume, soft, floral, unmistakably feminine, and not Lady Rosalind's heavy aristocratic scent. No, this was light, subtle, evasive. Poirot smiled slightly. "Ah," he murmured, "one of the ladies visited this room tonight, and she hoped to hide it." His fingers brushed the edge of the curtain again. He froze. A thread, a tiny silken thread, caught on the ornate brass hook. He plucked it carefully. "From a dress," he whispered. The pattern, once indistinct, began to sharpen. In the quiet of the study, Poirot straightened, eyes gleaming. "Murder!" he said softly, is like a tapestry. Pull one thread, and all becomes unravelled. Behind him, a floorboard creaked faintly. Poirot turned, but the hallway was empty. Someone had been watching him. He closed the door again, his mind racing. 5 clues, 5 suspects, and 1 killer whose time was running out. Poirot stood in the dim study, hands behind his back, and whispered, "The truth! It approaches, step by step." And the fog outside thickened, as if listening. Chapter 2. A lady in Distress Harbury House felt different in the morning, no less sombre, but altered in a subtle, unsettling way. During the night, the fog had retreated enough to reveal the estate's wide lawns and bare elms, their skeletal branches tapping faintly against the leaded windows like thin fingers seeking entry. A pale winter sun filtered through the clouds, cold and without compassion. Inside, servants moved quietly, glancing over their shoulders as though expecting the late Henry Harbury to stride down the corridor in one of his infamous tempers. Poirot, already impeccably dressed, stood near the tall window in the breakfast room. Before him lay a neat plate of toast, not yet touched, and a cup of steaming chocolate that sent up delicate tendrils of fragrance. The detective inhaled gently, then exhaled. "A house in mourning always stirs early," he murmured. He heard the rustle of skirts before Lady Rosalind entered. Her face was pale, but she had dressed with care. Pearls at her throat, hair pinned with strict precision, and dark circles just faint enough to betray a sleepless night. "Good morning, Monsieur Poirot," she said softly, voice tight but controlled. He bowed slightly. "Madame, you have my sympathies once again." A flicker of dizziness crossed her features before she steadied herself with a hand on the chair. Poirot stepped forward quickly. "You must sit." She obeyed. Her hands trembled. Her tea rattled slightly upon its saucer. "Forgive me," she whispered. "My strength seems determined to desert me today." "Grief is a thief, madame," Poirot said gently. "It steals from the body as well as the heart." She looked up sharply. "It is not only grief." Poirot's eyes narrowed just a fraction. "No." She hesitated. Then, gathering courage, I feared speaking of it last night, when all eyes were upon me. But I must tell someone. Something is wrong here, Monsieur Poirot. Something deeply wrong." He leaned closer. "Please, madame, speak." She lowered her voice until it was scarcely more than a whisper. Henry feared someone. He never confessed who, but he became increasingly suspicious. He dismissed 2 servants without reason. He locked his study the moment he left it. He even forbade me to enter. Poirot tapped a finger against his cup. "And yet, last night, you went to him." Her eyes widened. "Miss March told you." "She did," Rosalind swallowed. "We argued, yes, because Henry refused to tell me what troubled him. I begged him to confide in me, but he only said," her voice faltered. Poirot waited. "He said the house was no longer safe." Poirot straightened slowly, the words lingering in the air with an unnatural chill. "And you do not know why?" "No," she whispered, "but Henry had enemies. Money creates them easily." Poirot considered her carefully. Not only her words, but the tremor beneath them, the fear she tried to hide. "Madame," he said quietly, "fear can be a clue too." She looked down, fingers twisting a handkerchief. Then she asked timidly, "Do you truly believe one of us, someone within this house, killed him?" Poirot lifted the cup of chocolate and took a deliberate sip before answering. "I believe, madame, that the murderer did not arrive from the fog outside. No thief would risk such danger for a jewel he likely never knew existed. No, this crime blooms from a seed planted long ago." Rosalind shivered. Then we are living with a murderer. Poirot gave a slow, grave nod. By mid-morning, the drawing-room had been tidied, chairs realigned, curtains drawn back to allow in the weak sunlight. But the air held the same tension as the previous night. Inspector Gale had returned, looking more fatigued than before, his hat askew and his coat smelling faintly of cigar smoke. "Morning, Poirot," he grumbled. "Been up all night with statements." "Then you have my admiration, Inspector, or my pity." Gale snorted. "I'll take whichever comes with coffee." As if on cue, a servant appeared with a tray. Gale accepted a cup as though it were a medal of honor. Poirot rested his hands upon the back of a nearby chair. "I should like to interview each suspect again, separately." "Already?" Gale asked with a groan. "Already?" Poirot replied crisply. "Time, it is the enemy of truth. The longer we wait, the more lies settle themselves into comfortable chairs." Gale looked resigned. "Fine. Who first?" Poirot's eyes drifted toward the doorway, where a shadow lingered briefly before withdrawing. He recognized the shape instantly. "Let us begin," he said, "with Miss Edwina March." Miss March entered the study timidly, hands clasped demurely in front of her. In the morning light, her features seemed softer, her pale hair neatly pinned beneath a modest hat. Her eyes, however, remained sharp, a curious darting alertness behind the facade of meekness. "Please sit, mademoiselle," Poirot said kindly. She obeyed with graceful precision. "It must be very difficult for Lady Harbury," she murmured, smoothing her skirt. "She tries to appear strong, but I fear for her." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "Madame Harbury is fortunate to have such a devoted companion." Edwina lowered her eyes. "I do my best. You were with her last night until 11. Yes, Monsieur Poirot." And she left the room briefly to speak with her husband. "Yes." Poirot leaned forward. "Tell me, Miss March, did she appear distressed when she returned?" Edwina paused, too long for natural reflection. "A little," she said finally, "but Henry upset her often." Poirot nodded slowly. "And last night you wore a dress of blue silk?" She blinked. "Yes. How did you—" Poirot raised his fingers, lightly holding the silken thread discovered on the curtain hook. "You will forgive me. I am meticulous." Her lips parted, but no words emerged. Poirot gently continued. "Your perfume is delicate. Jasmine, I believe?" She nodded faintly. "It lingers in Mr. Harbury's study." She inhaled sharply, eyes widening with unmistakable fear. Monsieur Poirot, I only passed through the corridor earlier in the evening. Lady Harbury asked me to fetch a book. I did not enter the study." Poirot tilted his head. "I see. And yet the scent was strongest by the curtain nearest the safe." Her voice trembled now. "You cannot believe I had anything to do with Henry's death?" Poirot did not respond immediately. He watched her carefully, the fluttering pulse at her throat, the clenching of her hands. Signs of distress, certainly, but true fear, or fear of being discovered. Finally, he said gently, "I believe, mademoiselle, that you know more than you have said." Her lips tightened. Tears gathered, but did not fall. "I cannot speak of it," she whispered. "Not yet. Not unless I know Lady Harbury is safe." Poirot's eyebrow rose. "Safe from whom?" She shook her head frantically. "Please don't ask me. Not now." And before he could press further, she stood abruptly and fled the room. Inspector Gale muttered, "Well, that was enlightening." Poirot steepled his fingers. "It was, mon ami. Mademoiselle March fears someone. To fear is to know." Next came Charles Denholm, moving with the stiff posture of a man trying very hard to appear cooperative. His expression was strained, jaw clenched, eyes darting not at Poirot, but at the half-drawn curtains, as though expecting something unpleasant to materialize there. "Mr. Denholm," Poirot began mildly, "you quarrelled with Mr. Harbury regarding a business proposal." "Yes," Denholm said curtly, "and as I told the inspector, I left afterward." "What did the proposal entail?" He hesitated. "A merger. Harbury had reservations." "And what would you have gained from this merger?" "A great deal," Denholm said bluntly. "But I don't kill business partners, Poirot. It's bad for future negotiations." Poirot allowed himself a small smile. "A murderer rarely uses reason." Denholm's lips pressed into a thin line. Poirot circled the man slowly, observing, "Tell me, monsieur, did you notice anything unusual in the study? When you visited Henry earlier, anything at all?" The man exhaled sharply. "He seemed preoccupied. With the contract? No, with someone else." Denholm looked away. "He accused me of betrayal." Poirot's head tilted. "Had you betrayed him?" "No," Denholm snapped. Then calmer. "Henry had become paranoid in recent months, suspicious of everyone, even Rosalind." Poirot saw a flicker, just a flicker, of something resembling guilt. "Is there something you wish to tell me, monsieur?" Denholm swallowed. His voice lowered. "A week ago, Henry asked me to have a man followed." Poirot's brows lifted. "A man?" "Yes, his nephew, Oliver." Poirot stored the information away at once. "You believed Henry's concerns?" Denholm sighed. "Oliver is unreliable." Poirot nodded. "Thank you, monsieur. That is all for now." Denholm left quickly, as though escaping. Gale shook his head. "These people and their secrets?" Poirot murmured, "Secrets are seeds, Inspector. Given time, they grow vines around the truth." Oliver Harbury swaggered in next, though the confidence from the previous night had dulled. His collar was slightly askew, and he smelled faintly of stale cologne and whisky, leftovers from a sleepless night or early morning indulgence. "Morning, Poirot," he said with a forced grin. "Terrible business, isn't it?" Poirot watched him with an expression that made Oliver shift uncomfortably. "You were at your club last night?" "Yes." "You arrived home at 10:30. "Yes, I already told the inspector." "And you did not visit your uncle's study?" "Of course not." Poirot leaned back. "Your uncle hired a man to follow you. Did you know this?" Oliver's mouth fell open. "What? No, that's absurd." "Is it?" Poirot asked. "You have debts, many debts. Gambling is a dangerous hobby, monsieur." Oliver flushed. "Look, I may owe money, but I didn't kill the old man. He was a devil, but murder, no." His eyes darted around the room. "Did Denholm tell you about the money? He's always been jealous." Poirot narrowed his eyes. "Jealous of what?" Oliver hesitated. "Uncle Henry. He was going to leave me something substantial. He practically said so." Poirot smiled faintly. "And now, with his death, you receive it sooner?" Oliver stiffened. "That doesn't make me a murderer." Poirot rose and walked towards him slowly. "No, but it gives you motive." Oliver swallowed. For the first time, fear flickered in his eyes. Poirot dismissed him with a small nod. When the final door clicked shut, Inspector Gale groaned. "Well, which one is it?" Poirot did not answer immediately. Instead, he walked toward the fireplace. Kneeling, he sifted through the ashes with a careful hand. "The burned contract," he murmured. "The missing sapphire. The dying clue, the perfume." He rose. "We are missing one piece, Inspector. One small detail that will tie all threads." "And what detail is that?" Gale asked. Poirot smiled faintly. "We shall discover it together. But first, I must examine the safe more closely." The safe, monstrous and stoic against the far wall, bore the same superficial damage as the night before. Poirot crouched again, eyes narrowing. Gale hovered nearby. "What do you see?" Gale asked. Poirot traced the groove. Someone attempted to imitate a break-in, but look, beneath the scratches, a faint imprint, rectangular, smooth. Gale leaned in. "A tool mark?" "A case," Poirot whispered. The sapphire case was pressed here before being removed, and with considerable haste. He rose. "The jewel was taken before the safe was tampered with." Gale rubbed his neck. So the whole thing was staged. "Oui?" Poirot turned toward the desk. The broken paper scraps still lay sealed in an evidence envelope. "Ice," he murmured. "What was Mr. Harbury attempting to write? A name? A warning?" A sudden memory flickered. Lady Rosalind's trembling voice. Henry feared someone. The house was no longer safe. Poirot frowned. "What troubles you?" Gale asked. Poirot whispered, "A thought, a possibility. The message may not refer to a person, but to a place." Before Gale could respond, the study door opened abruptly. Lady Rosalind stood there, breathless. "Monsieur Poirot," she whispered, "you must come at once. It is Clara, the maid. She has disappeared." Poirot's eyes widened. "Disappeared, madame? Yes. Her room is empty, her coat gone, the back door unlocked." Poirot exchanged a sharp glance with Gale. The inspector snapped, "She's running!" Poirot raised a hand. "No, wait!" He turned to Rosalind gently. "Madame, did Clara have any reason to fear for her safety?" Lady Rosalind's face paled. I don't know." Poirot held her gaze steadily. "I think," he said softly, "you know more than you realize." Then he turned, his voice crisp and urgent. "Inspector, assemble everyone in the drawing room. The time has come to confront a truth." And under his breath, as he walked toward the hall, "For the threads tighten, and soon they will strangle the liar." Chapter 3. Whispers. Behind velvet doors. Harbury House held its breath. Not a servant moved, not a door creaked, not a whisper floated along the hall as Hercule Poirot crossed the carpeted corridor toward the drawing room. The news of Clara's disappearance had circulated with the speed of wildfire, fanning suspicion into full flame. The fog outside pressed against the windows in dull waves, as if the house were a ship adrift in a silent sea. Inside the drawing room, the suspects sat scattered like mismatched chess pieces. Oliver restless and tapping his foot. Charles Denholm pale beneath his businesslike facade. Edwina March tense and rigid, fingers locked tightly in her lap. Lady Rosalind standing apart, a fragile figure framed against the window's pale light. Poirot entered without ceremony. "Mes amis," he said, closing the door with deliberate grace, "our situation becomes more complicated, does it not?" Oliver scoffed. "You mean the maid running off? That sounds fairly simple to me." Poirot tilted his head. "Ah, but that is where you are mistaken. It is when the simplest explanation feels too simple that my little grey cells grow suspicious." Charles Denholm leaned forward. "Do you believe Clara killed Henry?" Poirot shook his head slightly. "Non, monsieur. Flight is not always guilt. Sometimes it is fear." Edwina's gaze jerked up at that word. Poirot did not miss it. "Fear of what?" Rosalind whispered. Poirot stepped toward her gently. "Fear of someone here. Fear of someone in this very room, perhaps." A faint ripple ran through the group. The detective clasped his hands behind his back. "Before we proceed with questions, I must ask you all to recount your movements again, very precisely, between the hours of 8 and 11 last night." A collective groan rose, but Poirot raised a finger. "Exactness, mes amis, is what reveals a lie." He turned to Edwina March first. "Mademoiselle, you say you remained with Lady Harbury until 11. You played cards, yes?" "Yes," she answered softly. "We played in the blue sitting room." Poirot nodded, and Lady Harbury left for a short time to speak with her husband. Rosalind swallowed, but did not deny it. Poirot's gaze sharpened. "But you, Miss March, you also left the sitting-room briefly, did you not?" Her breath caught, only for a moment, to fetch the silver tray the maid forgot. Poirot took a slow step toward her. "And during that moment, did you enter the study?" She looked horrified. "No, why would I?" "For fear," Poirot said quietly. "Fear makes people do strange things." Her eyes filled with tears, but she offered no more. Poirot turned next to Oliver. "You arrived home at 10:30, but no one witnessed your return." "I came in through the library door," Oliver said defensively. "The footman saw me. Ask him." Poirot shook his head. "The footman saw a figure entering, but he did not confirm it was you." Oliver stiffened. "What are you suggesting?" Poirot smiled mildly. "Only that I must confirm every detail." He pivoted to Charles Denholm. "And you, monsieur, you left Harbury House at 9:30, correct?" "Yes," Denholm said irritably. "I already told you that." "Indeed," Poirot murmured. "But there is something curious about your departure. The gatekeeper did not witness your exit." Denholm blinked. I used the side path. I wished to avoid speaking with the man." Poirot's lips curved. "Convenient, no?" Denholm clenched his fists. Poirot let the tension settle before turning to Lady Rosalind. "Madame," he said, softly, "you quarrelled with your husband at 10. What was the cause?" She shut her eyes for a moment, then opened them. "He accused me of hiding something from him." "Were you?" "No," Rosalind cried. Then, more quietly, "But Henry was not himself. His temper had grown darker every day." Poirot studied her for a long moment. Her distress was real, yet distress did not prove innocence. He exhaled slowly. "Bon, that is all for now." But instead of leaving the room, Poirot crossed to the velvet curtains framing the tall windows. He brushed a hand down their heavy folds. "You see these curtains?" he said softly. "They witnessed something last night." The others stared. Poirot continued. "Someone entered the study after Mr. Harbury burned the document. Someone who believed they would not be smelled. But perfume, it lingers like guilt." Edwina shrank back in her chair. Poirot looked directly at her. "Mademoiselle March, your scent is subtle, but unmistakable. Why was it in the study?" She shook her head desperately. "I didn't enter. Please, you must believe me." Poirot's tone softened. "If you did not enter the room, then someone wearing your perfume must have. A bottle, perhaps, that went missing, loaned, borrowed." Edwina's face drained of colour. Poirot smiled gently. "You see, a detail emerges." He turned sharply to Charles Denholm. "And you, monsieur, your hand trembles slightly. You are not a man who frightens easily. What troubles you?" Denholm looked away. "Nothing." Poirot stepped closer. "Your cufflink is missing." Denholm's head snapped up. Poirot held out the tiny fragment he had found beneath the desk the night before. "You lost this in the study." "That is absurd," Denholm said, voice suddenly hoarse. "And yet," Poirot said, "the fragment matches the crystal inset of your cufflinks perfectly." Denholm's face twisted. "I dropped it earlier, when Henry and I argued, that's all." "Earlier," Poirot repeated softly. "Not during the murder." "No." Poirot slipped the fragment back into his pocket, but his eyes remained fixed on Denholm. "There is more you are hiding," Poirot murmured. Much more. Before Denholm could retort, the door flew open. Inspector Gale entered hastily. "Poirot, we found something!" All eyes snapped toward him. "What is it?" Rosalind asked anxiously. Gale held up a folded piece of paper. This was found behind the stables, fresh footprints leading to it. Poirot took the paper delicately. He unfolded it. The colour drained from his face. Just a shade. But Gale saw it. "What is it?" Gale asked. Poirot held up the paper for the group. It was a note, written hastily, stained with mud, and undeniably Clara's handwriting. It contained only 4 words. "I know the truth." A stunned silence filled the room. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Mes amis," he said quietly, "Clara did not flee. Clara was taken." The room erupted into gasps. Poirot continued, voice low and deadly calm. "And the person who took her is one of you." Chapter 4. The Shadow in the Gatehouse. The note lay on the polished table like a living thing, small, damp, and trembling with implication. "I know the truth." 4 simple words that could unravel the entire fabric of Harbury House. And Clara, the meek, quiet maid who seldom spoke above a murmur, had written them. Hercule Poirot regarded the others with reflective calm, though a keen gleam burned behind his eyes. Fear now clung to the drawing-room, like a thin film of ice. Suspicion coiled in the corners. Guilt whispered beneath every breath. "Inspector Gale," Poirot said softly, "you found this behind the stables." Gale nodded. Fresh footprints leading from the courtyard, across the grass, and into the field beyond. Then they vanish into the fog. "Single pair of footprints?" Poirot asked. "Yes, going out," Gale replied. "But coming back. 2 sets. One heavier, one dragging." A shudder passed through the room. Rosalind's hand flew to her mouth as if to stifle a sob. Poirot closed the note with deliberate care. "Then Clara is alive, but not free. Someone took her. Someone who fears what she discovered." He turned to the suspects, his voice soft yet sharp as cut glass. "You each had reason to fear Clara if she overheard something. Confession, argument, the whisper of a secret. Last night, many voices rose in this house." Oliver scoffed, but the sound was thin. "So what now, Poirot? You're saying one of us attacked her and carried her into the yard without being seen? The staff would have heard." Poirot raised an eyebrow. Unless the abduction happened after most of the household retired, or unless it was done by someone Clara trusted enough not to scream. Oliver's bravado faltered. Poirot paused, then spoke with crisp authority. "I must see the gatehouse." Gale blinked. "The gatehouse? You think Clara was taken there?" Poirot nodded. The abductor needed a place close enough to move quickly, yet isolated enough to conceal her. The stables, too exposed. The cellar, too risky. But the gatehouse? Abandoned, locked, forgotten. Except by those who know this estate intimately. He let his gaze drift over Charles, Oliver, Rosalind, and Edwina. All of them shifted uneasily. "Come, Inspector," Poirot said. "We must not waste the time that Clara may not have to spare." The fog clung thickly to the lawn as Poirot and Gale strode across the grounds. The lamps cast halos of pale gold upon the swirling grey mist, turning every shrub and statue into a vague threat. A cold wind threaded through the trees, stirring dead leaves and carrying with it the faint metallic scent of rain. As they neared the gatehouse, its silhouette rose from the fog like the ribs of some ancient, forgotten beast. The structure was crooked with age, its windows boarded, its stone walls mottled with damp moss, its door hanging askew. Gale drew his revolver. "You think they brought her here?" Gale muttered. Poirot lifted a gloved hand. "Listen." They waited. A faint rhythmic sound drifted from within the gatehouse, soft, muffled, like a whimper pressed against cloth. Gale's eyes widened. He moved first, kicking the warped door with a force that sent it crashing inward. The hinges screamed, rotten wood splintered. Gale charged in, lantern raised. "Clara!" he called cautiously. Poirot followed at a measured pace. The interior was dim and stale. Dust coated every surface. Cobwebs clung like skeletal lace. But amid the decay was something new. A scattering of footprints, a length of rope, and in the corner, a narrow cot. And upon it, a shape, small, motionless. Poirot's heart tightened. "Clara!" Gale rushed forward and peeled away the coarse blanket. Clara's wide, terrified eyes stared back, but she was alive. Her mouth was gagged, her wrists tied, but she struggled frantically as Gale freed her. The moment the gag fell, she burst into sobs that shook her frail frame. "You are safe, mademoiselle," Poirot murmured, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "But you must try to speak before fear steals your strength." Gale steadied her. "Who did this to you, Clara? Who tied you up?" But Clara only shook her head violently, tears spilling. Her voice, when it finally emerged, was a fragile whisper. He said he'd kill me." Poirot leaned in. "Who, mon enfant?" Clara shuddered. I couldn't see him. He kept his face hidden, but his voice, I knew his voice." Poirot and Gale exchanged a sharp glance. "You recognized it?" Gale pressed. "Whose voice was it? Tell us." Clara swallowed, trembling. I can't. Poirot's expression softened into something like pity. "Did you write the note?" She nodded weakly. "What truth did you claim to know?" Clara closed her eyes. "Something I heard. Last night. After Mr. Harbury. After he died." Poirot waited. Clara forced the words out. "I heard someone in the corridor, 2 people, whispering, and one of them said that Mr. Harbury deserved it, that they had warned him, that now everything would be theirs." Gale stiffened. "Did you hear their names?" "No," Clara whispered, "but I heard a word, a strange word, over and over." Poirot leaned closer still. "What word?" Clara's eyes filled with raw fear. They kept saying, "inheritance." The detective let the silence settle like dust. Gale straightened. "So the killer was after Harbury's fortune? One of the family members?" Poirot tapped a finger to his lips. Or someone who hoped to become one. He rose slowly. "Clara, you must come with us. You will be safe now." "No," she cried suddenly. "He knows I'm alive. If he finds out I told you." Poirot took her hand. "Courage, mademoiselle. Hercule Poirot does not allow harm to come to those under his protection." He led her toward the door, and stopped. A faint crunch sounded outside the gatehouse. Gale froze. "Who's there?" Another crunch, slow, deliberate. Poirot motioned for silence. The fog pressed against the doorway like a living curtain. Footsteps shifted somewhere beyond it, neither hurried nor hesitant, watching, waiting. Then, just as suddenly as they came, the footsteps retreated. The fog swallowed them whole. As they made their way back to Harbury House, Clara leaning on Gale for support, Poirot cast a glance over his shoulder. The fog thickened behind them, cloaking the abandoned gatehouse. Poirot spoke softly, as if addressing the mist itself. "The killer grows bolder, Inspector. He watches us now. He listens." Gale tightened his grip on his revolver. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "And he makes one fatal mistake." Gale looked at him. "What mistake?" Poirot smiled faintly. "He underestimates Hercule Poirot." Chapter 5. The unpleasant revelation. The household gathered once more in the drawing-room, though the word gathered implies a calm unity wholly absent from the tension-choked air. It was rather a clustering of frightened gazes, restless limbs, and unspoken accusations. The fire crackled fiercely in the grate, its warmth doing nothing to melt the icy distrust settling over Harbury House. Heavy velvet curtains muffled the outside world, but no drapery could soften the cold truth. Clara had been kidnapped on the estate grounds, and someone in the room had done it. Poirot stood before the hearth, his silhouette outlined against the dancing flames. His expression was serene, but the stillness of his posture vibrated with precise calculation. Clara sat to one side, wrapped in a thick blanket, her eyes fixed on her hands. Rosalind hovered at her elbow like a nervous wren, while Charles paced in restless loops. Oliver slumped in a chair, arms crossed, scowling defensively. Edwina, pale as parchment, stared into her lap, her breathing shallow. Poirot raised a hand. "S'il vous plaît, we proceed with order." The murmurs died immediately. "Clara has been rescued," he said, "but she has also been threatened. It is clear her knowledge posed a danger to someone in this house." Oliver scoffed. "This is absurd. Any one of the servants could have done it." Poirot fixed him with a level look. "The servants were accounted for. You, monsieur, were not." A ripple ran through the room. Rosalind's voice trembled. "Monsieur Poirot, surely you don't think one of us is capable of abducting poor Clara?" "I think," Poirot replied gently, "that someone capable of murder is capable of many things." Charles stopped pacing. "You still claim my father was murdered, even after the doctors confirmed heart failure?" Poirot's little grey cells sparked with quiet intensity. "A heart may be persuaded to fail, monsieur. A man may be driven to death's edge. Do not assume nature alone played its hand." Charles's jaw clenched. A muscle twitched in his cheek. Poirot continued. "Clara overheard two people arguing the night Mr. Harbury died. One said he deserved it. Another said that now everything would be theirs, and repeated over and over the word inheritance." Rosalind's gasp sounded painfully loud. Edwina pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. Oliver rose abruptly. "Are you suggesting one of us plotted to speed up Harbury's death for money? That's revolting." Poirot's eyebrows lifted. "The suggestion came, monsieur, not from me, but from the words overheard." Oliver faltered. Poirot turned to Clara. "Mademoiselle, if you can speak, tell us, was the quarrel between a man and a woman, or two men?" Clara hesitated. Her voice came soft and trembling. "A man and a woman." The room shuddered with implications. Poirot nodded solemnly. "Then we narrow our field." Rosalind rose, her voice desperate. "But I would never harm my husband. You must believe that, Monsieur Poirot." Poirot studied her carefully. "Lady Harbury, it is not accusation I offer, only clarity. You will forgive me if I ask difficult questions. Grief, even the most genuine, can coexist with secrets." She sank back, shaken. Poirot allowed the silence to stretch until nerves frayed. Only the ticking of the ornate mantel clock broke the stillness. Then he shifted his attention. "Mr. Charles," he said softly, "you, above all, stood to inherit the estate." Charles stiffened. "And you think I killed my father for it? We barely spoke these last months, but I would never—" Poirot raised a hand. "You forget, monsieur, what you told me earlier, that your father intended to revise his will in Rosalind's favour." Charles fell silent. Poirot turned slowly, his voice silk over steel. "And Miss Edwina, you were in desperate financial need. Even a small part of the Harbury wealth could save your family's holdings." Edwina's eyes brimmed with tears. "I would not, could not ever hurt him. I cared for Mr. Harbury deeply." Poirot did not respond. Instead, he faced Oliver. "And you, Monsieur Oliver, your business ventures are, as you say, unpredictable. A sudden investment from Mr. Harbury might have been very welcome. Yet he refused. Oliver's cheeks flushed. His death gains me nothing. No, Poirot asked softly. But perhaps the removal of a barrier, an inconvenient patriarch, offers opportunities not yet visible. Oliver's fist clenched around the armrest. Poirot let the tension simmer, then shifted direction abruptly. I ask you all now, who here knew the gatehouse was unlocked? A ripple of confusion. Rosalind shook her head. The gatehouse! It has been shut for years. Charles frowned. The key was lost ages ago. Poirot smiled faintly. Ah, that is interesting. For someone had a key last night. Someone used it. Gale stepped forward. Poirot, we didn't find a key on Clara or in the gatehouse. But I found, Poirot said, a clue. He reached into his coat and withdrew a small metal object wrapped in a handkerchief. When he unwrapped it, a glint of dull gold shone in the firelight. A latch piece snapped from an old key. Charles inhaled sharply. That looks like the broken end of the gatehouse key, Poirot finished. You see the crest? The curling H? A family piece. It once hung on a ring with the estate keys. Rosalind whispered, horrified. Someone broke the key while unlocking the gatehouse. Poirot nodded. Yes, and then discarded the broken piece in the field. A careless mistake for a careful crime. Gale looked around the room. So, who had the original set of keys? Who could have had access to it? Rosalind bit her lip. My husband kept the estate keys in his private study. They were in the drawer with his personal documents. Poirot's voice dipped into a quiet, deadly whisper. A drawer that was rifled through last night. The shock rippled like a physical wave. Poirot continued. The study was disturbed long before the police arrived. Someone searched for something, perhaps financial papers, or a key. Charles looked aghast. You think one of us slipped into Father's study, searched his things, stole the key, and abducted Clara because she overheard? Poirot raised a gentle hand. Do not think, monsieur. Simply listen. He allowed the fire's glow to flicker across their frightened faces. Someone in this room, Poirot said softly, stood in that study last night. Someone opened the drawer. Someone found, or failed to find, the paper they sought. And when Clara overheard the quarrel, that same someone silenced her. He looked at them each in turn. And now that person knows. Poirot's eyes narrowed. That the net begins to tighten. A cold breath moved through the room, though no window was open. Then, from the hallway beyond the drawing room, came a violent crash, the unmistakable shattering of glass. Gale spun toward the doorway. Poirot's voice was low, almost serene. Ah, our culprit grows desperate. Chapter 6. Footprints of a Phantom. Approx. 1,050 words, the shattering crash echoed like a gunshot through the marble corridors of Harbury House. Conversations died mid-breath, fear tightening every spine. Poirot lifted a hand with quiet authority, halting the instinctive rush toward the hallway. Non, non, we proceed with caution. A desperate killer is a dangerous one, especially when cornered. Inspector Gale had already drawn his revolver, jaw locked in steely readiness. Stay in this room, all of you. Anyone attempts to leave, I'll consider it suspicious. Rosalind gave a small cry, clutching Clara's arm. Oliver muttered a curse under his breath. Edwina rose to her feet in a tremulous daze. Charles, pale and sweating, stared at the doorway as though expecting death itself to stride through. Poirot's gaze flickered over them all before he turned toward the hall. The drawing-room door creaked open under Gale's cautious push. Cool, musty air spilled in from the corridor, carrying with it a strange scent. Something sharp, metallic, faintly acrid. Poirot stepped out first, Gale close behind, the lantern's trembling glow slicing through pockets of darkness. The source of the crash was immediately apparent. The tall cabinet at the end of the corridor, an antique display case filled with Harbury heirlooms, lay shattered across the floor. Ancient glass glittered like 1,000 tiny stars scattered over the rug. A porcelain vase, once a centerpiece of the collection, had broken into pale fragments. But the destruction was not the most striking detail. It was the footprints. A trail of them, dusty, erratic, led through the debris. Some prints were deep, purposeful. Others smeared as if made in hurried flight. The trail extended toward the corridor's far end, disappearing around a bend like a fleeing ghost. Gale's eyes narrowed. Someone came this way, or ran this way. Poirot crouched to study the prints. Observe, mon ami, 2 sets, yet they do not belong to 2 people. Gale frowned. Explain. Poirot traced one print with a gloved fingertip. The deeper set. These are left by a heavy shoe, perhaps a man's. But see here, the lighter ones? They overlap perfectly at the heel, offset only at the toe. A single person made both. Gale blinked. Why would someone leave 2 sets of prints? Poirot rose, brushing his knees, to appear as though they were chased, or chasing another. Our culprit attempts misdirection, but the feet, they betray him. Gale exhaled sharply. So this was staged. Poirot gave a crisp nod. Oui. A clumsy attempt to suggest that an intruder broke the cabinet and fled, but no intruder came. The danger is from within these walls. A distant sound drifted through the house. A creak of floorboards, then silence. Come, Poirot said, we follow where the prints lead. They moved swiftly but silently, lantern light skimming over portraits that watched them with solemn, painted eyes. The corridor narrowed, ceilings lowering slightly, shadows thickening like pooled ink. The prints became more frantic here, scuffed, erratic, as if the person ran with uneven weight or struggled to maintain balance. Gale whispered, heading toward the old servants' wing. Indeed, Poirot murmured, an area seldom used, a place where one could hide. The trail led them to a narrow doorway at the end of the hall. The wooden panel hung ajar, its hinges rusted from years of neglect. Poirot placed a hand on the door and pushed. It opened with a slow, mournful groan. Inside lay darkness, dense, layered, untouched. Gale entered first, revolver raised. Show yourself! Police! Silence answered. Poirot lifted the lantern, and the shadows withdrew to reveal dusty storage trunks, sheets draped over forgotten furniture. A broken rocking horse, the remnants of another era. Yet one thing was unmistakably out of place. A thick tapestry on the far wall hung slightly askew, its lower edge stirring, as if disturbed recently. Poirot and Gale advanced. Gale grasped the tapestry and yanked it aside. Behind it was a door. A narrow, hidden door made of wood far older than the surrounding architecture. Poirot's eyes gleamed with sudden intensity. An old servant's passage. Many country estates possess them, but this one has fresh fingerprints on the knob. Gale tested the handle. It turned freely, unlocked. Poirot nodded, because someone used it very recently. Gale pushed the door open. A chill exhaled from the narrow staircase beyond, spiraling downward into darkness. Poirot held up the lantern. The flame flickered violently, but enough light spilled down to reveal more footprints, fresh ones, leading into the depths. Poirot's voice dropped to a whisper. The killer uses the passages to move unseen. We are no longer dealing with panic, but with planning. Gale's grip on his revolver tightened. Let's go. They descended carefully. each step groaning beneath their weight. The staircase wound tightly, the air growing colder, thicker. Along the stone walls, scratches and old soot marked decades of forgotten use. At the bottom, the passage opened into a low-ceilinged corridor of brick. Poirot studied the ground. "Look here, the prints stop." Gale crouched. "Where did he go?" Poirot scanned the walls. Then he saw it, a faint disturbance in the dust, a smear, a drag mark. He followed it to a narrow stone recess where a panel had been pushed inward. A secret compartment, and inside, nothing. Empty space where something had recently been hidden. Poirot's eyes sharpened. "Inspector, the killer did not flee. He came to retrieve something." Gale straightened. "What do you think was kept here?" Poirot answered without hesitation. "A document, perhaps the missing will, or a letter revealing motive. Something Mr. Harbury wished to protect." Gale swore under his breath. "And now the killer has it." Poirot nodded slowly. "Oui, but in retrieving it, he has exposed himself." Gale looked over sharply. "How?" Poirot turned from the recess with a serene smile. "Because only 3 people in this house had knowledge of these passages." Gale blinked. 3. Poirot lifted a finger. Lady Rosalind, whose family owned the estate before her marriage. A second finger. Charles Harbury, who explored every corner as a boy. A third. And Oliver, who boasted earlier of sneaking through the house unnoticed in his youth. Gale exhaled. So the killer must be. But Poirot gently shook his head. "No, mon ami, not yet. We do not leap. We climb." His eyes glimmered with certainty. "The truth is near, and our culprit knows it." A distant echoing footstep drifted from above. Then another. Someone was in the main house, moving quickly. Poirot extinguished the lantern. "In the dark," he whispered, "a phantom walks." Chapter 7. The Gathering Storm. A storm had rolled in by the time Poirot and Inspector Gale emerged from the hidden passage. The once still night now pulsed with the restless energy of a brewing tempest. Wind hissed against the window frames, rattling them like bones. The lamps flickered as if recoiling from the tension that had infected every corner of Harbury House. Outside, thunder grumbled low and ominous, as though echoing the house's growing unrest. Poirot paused at the foot of the staircase, the shadows stretching long beside him. "The killer moves above us, Inspector, deliberately, not in panic." His voice was soft, though sharpened by certainty. Gale holstered his revolver and adjusted the lantern. "If he's got whatever was hidden in that passage, he'll want to destroy it, or hide it again." Poirot shook his head slowly. "A desperate man hides. A clever one. Alters." His eyes narrowed. "I suspect he seeks to reshape the narrative before the storm breaks upon him." They advanced quietly down the corridor, the wooden floorboards groaning beneath their feet. As they approached the main hall, a distant murmur drifted toward them, the anxious voices of the household left behind in the drawing room. Poirot could distinguish Rosalind's tremulous pleas, Oliver's short-tempered curses, Charles's pacing footfalls, and Edwina's soft, broken sniffles. Fear had turned them inward, devouring reason. Poirot entered the room with his usual calm, yet even he could not dispel the oppressive atmosphere. All faces turned to him instantly, desperate for answers, reassurance, or, most dangerously, validation of their own suspicions. Rosalind rose first, pale and shaking. "Monsieur Poirot, what was that terrible noise? Are we in danger?" Poirot bowed slightly. "Madame, I assure you the danger is not from without. It walks among us." His gaze slid smoothly across the room, lingering on each suspect in turn. The shattered cabinet was no random act. It was staged. Someone attempted to mislead the investigation. Oliver jumped to his feet, indignant. This again? How do you know it wasn't an intruder? Poirot held up a hand. Because only someone familiar with the house, its history, its secrets, could access the hidden servant passages beneath it. And more importantly, because the crime was not one of rash violence, but of calculation. He turned toward Gale. "Did you retrieve the fragment of the broken key, Inspector?" Gale nodded and handed it over. Poirot addressed the room. This key, broader, older, and bearing the Harbury crest, once unlocked the Ayuk gatehouse. The crime against Clara required access. Who had reason to silence her? Charles stiffened. She didn't hear anything important, just two people arguing. Poirot's eyes flashed. Two people discussing inheritance, Monsieur Charles, and declaring that Mr. Harbury deserved it. That is no small thing. A strange silence fell. Rosalind clasped her hands tightly. Then those voices. One of them must have been familiar to Clara. She said she recognized one. A man's voice. Edwina let out a soft gasp. But which of you? Charles glared at Oliver. You were always arguing with father. Everyone knows you tried to get him to invest. Oliver snapped back. And you hated him for threatening to rewrite the will. Poirot watched the exchange with cool detachment, then spoke sharply. Enough! The word cut through chaos like a blade. Accusations thrown in fear are seldom accurate, Poirot said. We must consider motive, opportunity, and the timeline. He stepped nearer the fire, allowing the warm light to illuminate his face. Let us examine what we know. Mr. Harbury died of apparent heart failure. The doctor believes it natural, but it might not be. A quarrel was overheard. The study was searched. A hidden compartment has been emptied. Clara was abducted by someone she recognized, and the person now possesses a document that could alter every claim and every fortune in this house. Edwina's voice was barely a whisper. The will, the new will. Could that be what they found? Poirot inclined his head slightly. Possibly. A revised will could reveal all. Charles's face went white. If father changed it, if he left, nothing to me. His voice trailed into a strained silence. Oliver crossed his arms. Or perhaps he left everything to Rosalind. Wouldn't that give her motive? Rosalind recoiled as if struck. How dare you? I loved my husband. And yet, Oliver said coldly, love does not negate ambition. Poirot intervened with quiet authority. Ambition? No. But timing? Yes. He walked toward Rosalind, his gaze unreadable. Lady Harbury, where were you between midnight and 1 o'clock, the time during which Clara overheard the quarrel? Rosalind blinked rapidly. I was in my room. I could not sleep. Poirot tilted his head. Alone? A tear slipped down her cheek. Yes, alone. Oliver seized the moment. How convenient! Poirot ignored him and shifted to Charles. Monsieur Charles, you claimed you were in the billiard room, yet no one saw you. Charles swallowed hard. Because I was alone too. Poirot raised a brow. Alone seems to be quite fashionable tonight. He turned to Edwina next. And you, mademoiselle? Edwina's voice shook. I sat in the library. I was writing letters. To whom? Poirot asked. Her silence was answer enough. Poirot pressed on. And you, Monsieur Oliver? Oliver straightened, chin raised. I was in the smoking room. Gale saw me. Gale nodded reluctantly. He was there when I passed around midnight, yes. Poirot glanced over his shoulder. But not after? Gale hesitated. No, I cannot confirm. The fire crackled loudly in the hush that followed. Poirot clasped his hands behind his back, pacing slowly. "Each of you had the chance to move through the passages. Each of you could have wielded the broken key. Each of you could have sought the hidden document." He stopped abruptly, turning toward the window as a flash of lightning split the sky. "And yet," he murmured, "only one of you shows signs of a particular anxiety. A fear not of accusation, but of discovery." The room held its breath. Poirot pivoted sharply to face the group. "The truth gathers around us like this storm," he said, voice steady, "and someone in this house knows that their time runs short." A thunderclap shook the walls, and somewhere upstairs a door slammed violently. Gale jerked his head toward the noise. "That came from the east wing." Poirot nodded gravely. "Then let us go, Inspector. It seems our phantom has taken shelter there." Chapter 8. The East Wing Confrontation. The east wing of Harbury House loomed before Poirot and Inspector Gale like a dark sentinel. Its windows shuttered and streaked with rain. Lightning arced across the sky, illuminating the intricate stonework and casting long, spidery shadows across the gravel path. Each clap of thunder resonated through the walls, echoing as if the house itself were gasping in anticipation. The wind tore at their coats, rattling the heavy doors, while the scent of damp earth and ozone clung to the night air. Poirot paused at the threshold, his hand resting lightly on the doorframe. "Inspector, the killer is near. He knows the document has been discovered. He may also know that Clara has escaped, or is at least alive." His eyes gleamed in the lantern's glow. Fear sharpens cunning, and desperation makes a man reckless. Gale's revolver was already drawn. "Ready, Poirot. Let's go in." They pushed open the door, the hinges groaning in protest. Inside, the hall was dim, lit only by sporadic flashes of lightning streaming through the narrow windows. The east wing had long been neglected. Dust coated every surface, cobwebs draped from corners, and the scent of mildew hung heavy. The sound of their boots on the creaking floorboards seemed deafening, each step announcing their approach. A faint scuffing echoed from the far end of the hall. Poirot held up a hand. "He moves!" They advanced cautiously. Gale's eyes darted toward the open doors of side rooms. Poirot, however, walked with the quiet authority of a man accustomed to reading subtle signs. He noted footprints in the dust, deep, irregular impressions from one foot paired with lighter, hurried steps. The same pattern he had seen before. A single person, attempting to mask their movements. Suddenly, a shadow flickered at the far end of the corridor. Gale raised his voice. "Come out, now!" No response. Poirot's expression remained serene. "Patience, Inspector. Observe." Another flash of lightning revealed a figure darting through the open doorway to the library. Gale lunged forward, but Poirot's hand stopped him. "No, let him move. Observe his pattern." The figure emerged again, this time from the study. The silhouette was unmistakably tense, careful, and hurried. Poirot's eyes narrowed. He is retracing his steps, looking for something or someone. A door at the end of the hall slammed violently. Gale's head whipped around. "That came from the upstairs landing!" Poirot moved swiftly, guiding Gale towards the stairwell. Their boots clattered on the steps as they ascended, lantern swinging. At the landing, the figure was gone, but the evidence of a hurried passage remained. Upturned chairs, a fallen candlestick, a smear of dust indicating weight pressed against the wall. The signs were subtle, but unmistakable. Poirot examined the landing carefully. He knows the house intimately. Only someone with unrestricted access could move with such confidence. Gale frowned. So, one of the household, or someone who studied it thoroughly. Indeed, Poirot said softly, "and our phantom is desperate. Observe the trajectory. He seeks concealment, yet remains within range of our observation." Another flash of lightning revealed movement in the far corner of the corridor. Slow, deliberate, and careful. Poirot's finger lifted, indicating the direction. There! They approached the corner cautiously, the lantern's glow revealing a tapestry that hung slightly askew. Poirot drew closer, his eyes scanning every inch. Then, in one fluid motion, he yanked the tapestry aside. The figure froze. It was Oliver. His face was pale, a mask of desperation and calculated fear. In his hands he held a small, rolled parchment, the very document that had been missing from the hidden compartment. His eyes darted between Poirot and Gale, assessing, calculating. Poirot's voice was soft but carried weight. "Monsieur Oliver, you have worked diligently to conceal your actions." Oliver swallowed, lips trembling. I didn't mean to." "You mean to manipulate fortune, to hide the truth, to abduct Clara when she overheard too much?" Poirot interrupted gently. "Do not falter in your confession. The evidence is overwhelming." Gale stepped forward. "Hand over the document, now!" Oliver's hands shook. He took a slow step backward, then another. I only wanted to secure what was rightfully—" Poirot's little grey cells worked at full capacity, observing every twitch, every micro-expression. "What was rightfully yours?" he asked quietly. "You speak of inheritance, of opportunity, of necessity, but do you truly understand the crime you have committed?" Oliver's eyes flickered. I thought no one would find out. I only intended to abduct the girl, hide the will, stage evidence," Poirot finished. "Yes, and yet you underestimated courage, observation, and, naturally, justice." Oliver's shoulders sagged as if the weight of truth pressed down on him. I didn't mean to harm her, Clara." Poirot's expression softened, though his voice remained firm. "No physical harm has come, thanks to your own recklessness and her fortitude. But fear alone is a terrible burden to impose upon the innocent." Gale motioned for Oliver to drop the document, which he did reluctantly, rolling it onto the floor. Poirot picked it up carefully, inspecting the seal, then handed it to Gale for safekeeping. The rolled parchment was intact, confirming the revised will, detailing Harbury's intentions to redistribute his fortune. Poirot turned to Oliver, his voice gentle but resolute. "And now, Monsieur Oliver, the consequences of your actions must follow." Oliver sank to his knees, the weight of realization settling upon him. Gale placed handcuffs on him, guiding him with a firm but controlled grip toward the main hall. His eyes followed Poirot with a mixture of defiance and defeat, the storm outside reflecting the chaos within. Poirot remained at the landing for a moment, gazing out a window as lightning illuminated the grounds. The house, battered by wind and rain, seemed to breathe in relief. Clara had been found, the will recovered, the culprit unmasked. He descended the stairs slowly, voice quiet, yet carrying authority. "Mes amis," he said upon reaching the drawing-room, "the storm that has haunted Harbury House for nights finds its resolution tonight. Fear has been confronted, truth has been revealed, and justice, albeit belatedly, will prevail." Rosalind approached Clara, embracing her tightly. Edwina exhaled in relief, while Charles sank into a chair, shaking his head. Even in the wake of confession, the atmosphere was still tense, the shadows long, the memory of fear lingering. Poirot's eyes swept across the room one last time. "Yet remember, mes amis, the lesson remains. Human nature is fragile, desires are powerful, and secrets, when exposed, demand accountability." Gale looked at him, impressed despite the chaos. "You always see the threads before anyone else, Poirot." The detective smiled faintly, almost amused. "Ah, Inspector, it is the little grey cells, nothing more. But even cells require patience, observation, and calm. And sometimes a storm." Chapter 9. Secrets Unveiled. Morning broke over Harbury House, but it brought no warmth to the weary occupants. Rain still tapped against the windows, leaving streaks across the glass, and the wind moaned through the eaves like a lament. Yet the storm outside could not rival the tempest within. The house, once a sanctuary of wealth and routine, had become a theatre of fear, betrayal, and revelation. Even in daylight, the shadows of the night's horrors clung to the corners, as if reluctant to let go. Poirot sat in the drawing-room, calm in his chair, the weight of thought pressing upon him like a deliberate companion. Inspector Gale leaned against the mantel, arms folded, eyes alert, ever wary of the aftermath that tends to follow a confessed crime. Around them, the household stirred. Rosalind pacing nervously, Edwina wringing her hands, Charles staring at the floor, and Clara quietly gathering herself. After the ordeal, the stillness held, punctuated only by the occasional creak of the house, or the distant drip of water from the eaves. Poirot spoke at last, his tone deliberate. "Mes amis, we have recovered the will. We have discovered the person responsible for Clara's abduction. But there remains another question, one of the deepest import. Why was Mr. Harbury targeted, even in death, with such precision?" Oliver, seated stiffly under the watchful gaze of Gale, did not respond, but the guilt in his expression was palpable. Rosalind's voice, hesitant yet trembling, broke the silence. It was greed, wasn't it? A desire to inherit what was not yet one's own?" Poirot nodded slightly. "Oui, madame, but there is more. Greed, when mingled with desperation, can twist even loyalty, affection, or conscience into something unrecognizable. Observe, mes amis, the careful placement of objects, the staged noises, the calculated abduction, none of it was random. It required observation, patience, and opportunity. That is the signature of someone who knew the estate intimately." Charles's jaw tightened. "And you truly believe Oliver did all this alone?" Poirot's little grey cells had traced every step of the night, and his mind pieced together a meticulous puzzle. Alone, yes, but encouraged, perhaps. An opportunity whispered by circumstance, a temptation amplified by ambition. Monsieur Oliver saw the will, recognized the opportunity, and acted on impulse guided by fear that discovery would be too late. Gale shook his head. "It's hard to imagine someone we've known all our lives acting like this." Poirot's eyes softened slightly. "Ah, Inspector, that is the nature of human behavior. One may smile, one may joke, one may even appear humble. Yet when desire eclipses reason, even the most familiar of faces can betray." A sudden knock at the door made everyone start. A young footman entered cautiously, carrying a tray. On it lay a folded note, sealed with a smear of wax. Rosalind reached for it, her hand trembling, and opened it slowly. Her eyes widened as she read aloud. "I knew my silence would be tested. I leave this for those who seek the truth. Look beneath the hearth. There, secrets of the past lie hidden." Poirot's brows arched imperceptibly. Ah, secrets of the past. A final whisper from the one who has departed, yet not yet entirely. Silenced. "Inspector, would you be so kind?" Gale nodded, and together they lifted the hearth, revealing a shallow cavity. Inside lay a bundle of old letters, meticulously tied with a faded ribbon. Poirot took one in his hand, gingerly unfolding it. The paper was brittle, the ink faded but legible. He read silently, his eyes narrowing, lips pressing into a thin line. The letters. They confirm suspicions, he murmured finally. Mr. Harbury was aware of plots long before his death. He knew the ambitions of those closest to him, and foresaw attempts to manipulate his fortune. This is why the will was revised, to protect those deserving and prevent the unscrupulous from prevailing. Charles leaned forward, voice shaking. So all of this, the abduction, the secret passages, the panic, it was all to prevent the rightful will from being enforced? Poirot nodded. Exactly, Monsieur Charles. The perpetrator, Oliver, acted on greed, yes, but also fear. He feared discovery, exposure, and ultimately the loss of opportunity. The letters clarify that Mr. Harbury anticipated such a reaction. Hence, the complexity of his estate and the secrecy surrounding the gatehouse passages. Rosalind's eyes were wet with a mixture of grief and relief. And Clara, she knew too much. Oui, madame, Poirot said. Her innocence and proximity made her a threat, not because she intended to interfere, but because she observed and remembered. Fear makes criminals bold, yet careful observation turns them into prisoners of their own designs. Edwina stepped forward cautiously. So, all our suspicions, Oliver's planning, his knowledge of the house, even the staged cabinet, everything was to cover his tracks. Poirot inclined his head. Everything. Yet it is in the small details, the broken key, the overlapping footprints, the abduction, that the truth becomes visible. A criminal's pride is often their undoing. Each action leaves a mark, a clue. A little grey cell never forgets these traces. Gale glanced at Oliver, seated silently, head bowed. He's going to have to answer for all of it. Poirot's gaze remained on him. Justice, Inspector, must always follow the evidence. We have observed, deduced, and confronted the truth. The law will now act, guided by the clarity of facts. Oliver finally looked up, voice hoarse. I didn't want anyone hurt. I only wanted what I thought was mine. Poirot's expression was gentle, yet firm. Desire unchecked, Monsieur Oliver, can destroy both the innocent and the guilty. Fortunately, you acted without violence, and now the lessons of consequence are before you. The storm outside began to wane. Sunlight pierced the heavy clouds, spilling through the rain-streaked windows and bathing the drawing-room in a pale, forgiving light. The house seemed to exhale, releasing the tension that had gripped it for so long. Yet even in that light, the memory of fear, greed, and betrayal lingered like an indelible shadow. Poirot looked across the room, eyes softening as he regarded Clara, Rosalind, and the others. The night has passed, mes amis. Truth has been unveiled, courage rewarded, and justice prepared. Yet remember this. Secrets, when left unexamined, can fester and grow, and one must always watch carefully for the shadows in which desire may hide. Charles, still pale, nodded slowly. I understand, Monsieur Poirot. We've been blind to so much. Rosalind reached for Clara's hand, and Edwina offered a small, reassuring smile. Even the storm's remnants, dripping from the eaves, seemed now like tears of relief rather than fear. Poirot leaned back in his chair, a faint smile crossing his lips. Ah, yes, the little grey cells have worked, and the puzzle has been solved. But remember, mes amis, the world is full of mysteries, and it is only those who observe carefully who will see the truth before it vanishes into shadow. The room remained quiet, save for the gentle patter of lingering raindrops against the windows. Outside, the storm clouds drifted slowly away, revealing blue sky and a rising sun. Harbury House, battered but unbroken, stood resolute, its secrets laid bare, its truths acknowledged, and its inhabitants forever changed by the events of that night. Chapter 10. Justice and Reflection. The morning sun rose fully over Harbury House, illuminating the aftermath of chaos with a quiet, almost gentle authority. The storm had passed, leaving the estate slick and shining, droplets glinting on the gravel paths and garden hedges. Inside, the air was thick with a mixture of relief, lingering tension, and the residual whispers of what had transpired. The house no longer seemed like a stage of fear, but rather a monument to lessons hard-earned, the consequences of ambition, secrecy, and the human desire for control. Hercule Poirot sat in the drawing-room, his posture calm yet purposeful. Inspector Gale, weary but vigilant, remained nearby. Clara, still fragile from her ordeal, sat with Rosalind by her side, their hands entwined as if to fortify each other against the lingering tremors of fear. Charles sat quietly, deep in thought, while Edwina, pale but serene, watched the scene with an air of cautious optimism. Even Oliver, now subdued and resigned, occupied a chair near the hearth, the weight of guilt heavy upon him. Poirot spoke, his voice deliberate and composed. "Mes amis, the events of the past days have shown us the extremes to which fear and ambition may drive a human being. Monsieur Oliver, you acted on desperation and opportunity. Yet it is important to understand that truth, like water, will always find a way to surface." Oliver bowed his head, his hands folded in his lap. I realize now how foolish I was. I only wanted to secure what I thought was my right. Poirot's gaze softened. Desire unchecked can blind even the most careful of minds. Your intentions, while misguided, resulted in panic and the endangerment of another. Clara, you were witness and victim, yet your courage has revealed the truth. Clara, her eyes glistening but steady, spoke softly. I was frightened, but I remembered what Monsieur Poirot taught me. Observe, think, and remain calm. Rosalind squeezed her hand, and now, at last, we can begin to heal. Poirot nodded. Yes, healing begins with understanding, and understanding begins with clarity. Let us review, one final time, the sequence of events that brought us to this moment. He gestured to Gale. "Inspector, if you please." Gale took a deep breath. Mr. Harbury's death appeared natural, but was preceded by a quarrel overheard by Clara between two individuals discussing the inheritance. The study had been rifled through, the secret compartment emptied, and Clara was abducted to prevent exposure. Evidence of the crime included the broken gatehouse key, footprints staged to mislead, and the abduction itself, all pointing to someone familiar with the estate. Poirot continued. Correct. Oliver, having learned of the revised will and fearful of losing the opportunity, acted on impulse. He staged the cabinet incident to mislead investigators, used the passages to move unseen, and abducted Clara to prevent her from revealing what she had heard. Yet, in his carelessness, he left traces that could not escape my observation. He leaned back slightly, eyes sweeping the room. The broken key, overlapping footprints, and the abduction all created a trail, one that allowed us to reconstruct the events. And finally, the letters hidden beneath the hearth confirmed Mr. Harbury's foresight and his anticipation of human ambition. Rosalind exhaled. So, it was all meant to protect the estate and ensure fairness in the will. Poirot inclined his head. Precisely, madame. Mr. Harbury's foresight ensured that only truth and observation could reveal the consequences of desire, greed, and secrecy. Those who acted rashly revealed themselves, while the innocent, courageous, and observant, Clara among them, emerged unharmed. Charles spoke quietly, still processing the revelations. It's astonishing that all this was orchestrated by my father's foresight. And yet, how fragile human nature is. Poirot's expression softened. Fragile, yes, Monsieur Charles, but also resilient. Observe how each person has responded. Fear and suspicion gave way to understanding. Courage revealed the truth, and even those who erred are now subject to the law and the natural consequences of their actions. Gale looked toward Oliver. Justice will take its course. You'll answer for the abduction, the concealment, and the attempted manipulation of evidence. Oliver nodded solemnly. I accept it. I must face the consequences of my choices. Poirot's gaze returned to the room. And now, mes amis, we may breathe. Fear has been confronted, truth has been revealed, and justice, though delayed, has been set in motion. Rosalind moved toward Poirot, a faint smile of gratitude on her lips. Monsieur Poirot, you've not only solved the mystery, but preserved what remains of our family's honour. Poirot bowed slightly. Ah, madame, it is not I who preserves honour. It is the courage and honesty of those who act rightly, even in fear. The little grey cells merely illuminate the path already present in human behaviour. Edwina stepped forward. And Clara, will she be safe now? Poirot's eyes crinkled in a small, approving smile. She will be protected, mademoiselle. Her courage, discretion, and calm observation have ensured her safety. And she will be watched, of course, until all is settled legally. Clara offered a shy nod. I will do my best, Monsieur Poirot. The sunlight now filled the drawing-room fully, chasing away shadows and bathing the assembled group in a pale, warm glow. The storm had passed in every sense. The external tempest replaced by clarity. The chaos within replaced by understanding and order. Poirot stood and moved toward the window, gazing out across the grounds. See how the storm leaves the earth refreshed? So too with truth. Harbury House, though shaken, will endure. Its walls may remember the fear, but they will also witness the resolution, the courage and the justice that has restored balance. Gale nodded, his usual stern demeanour softened. It's remarkable how you see it all, Poirot. Every action, every consequence, every hidden motive. Poirot smiled faintly, tilting his head. It is the little grey cells, Inspector. Observation, reasoning, and patience. But more than that, it is the human heart and its predictable patterns that allow one to discern the truth, even amidst chaos. Rosalind, placing a hand gently on her chest, whispered, Thank you, truly, Monsieur Poirot. Poirot's eyes swept across the room one last time, noting expressions of relief, lingering fear and cautious hope. The night has ended, mes amis. Fear has been confronted, secrets laid bare, and justice enacted. Remember this lesson. Human nature is a puzzle, often obscured by ambition, desire, and secrecy, but clarity can always be found if one observes with patience, logic, and compassion. The family and the household breathed more freely, the tension in their shoulders easing. Outside, the sun continued to rise, reflecting off wet leaves and the mansion's grand facade. The estate, though bruised by events, stood intact, its secrets revealed, its truths acknowledged, its inhabitants forever changed. Poirot leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, a faint smile of satisfaction touching his lips. And so, mes amis, the case is complete. The storm has passed, the guilty are known, the innocent protected, and the house may now rest in peace. Yet let all remember, truth, once observed, cannot be hidden forever.